Okay.
Dad.
Our goal in this session is to do a few practices with the application so that when you do yours a little bit later this week, it'll come pretty easy. But the other thing too, I think we're going to try, I don't know how long it'll go, but I'm going to try to leave some time so that if anybody has some questions, want a little bit of feedback before we go, we could, try to provide that for you.
Staying on the same page on 59.
Yes, we'll be on 59. Well, you can jot anything you want to on 59. It's just kind of a blank space. Joe just handed out to you the page that you can write on, and you will use for examples that you hopefully can allude back to. So I'm going to do some PowerPoint. I'm going to do some of the board on the board as well. So right now, let's turn to in our Bibles to Genesis chapter 2. Genesis chapter 2. Now this is a lengthy passage, 7 through 30. Genesis 2:7 through 3:24. We're not going to take time to read all this. I'm going to give you 2 or 3 seconds, not I mean 2 or 3 minutes to scan it. Seconds. See how fast you can go. 2 or 3 minutes to kind of scan through it. It's a familiar story anyway. It's obviously about sin entering into the world. So here's what I want you to do as you kind of read through it. I want you to look for and asking yourself, where's the problem? Where's the love of God evidenced? First of all, who are the main character or characters in the story?
Adam and Eve.
There you go. Okay, so Adam and Eve, what's the problem? Where's the love of God shown? What is their offered solution? What is the climax and what is the conclusion? Okay, we're going to work on those together, but scan through it in the next 2 or 3 minutes and kind of keep these things in your mind, and then we will talk through it accordingly. We got it scanned through. So I know it's a lengthy passage. But from being familiar with, who are the main characters besides Adam and Eve? Any other characters?
The serpent.
Okay, God, the serpent representing Satan. All right, not the only other characters that are mentioned. And the 2 main characters have a huge problem. What is the problem?
The tree.
Disobeyed God.
The tree isn't necessarily, it is a problem, but it's only if they eat of it.
Disobeyed.
Okay? It's where they ate of that tree, right? And where do we find them eating of the tree? What passage? Okay? Adam and Eve disobeyed God. It's on the screen if you wanted to write it down as you go along too, or you can put it in your own words. Adam and Eve disobeyed God after being tempted by Satan. And so the woman eats it, she's tricked, and she gives it to her husband who is with her, near her, nearby, however it worked. He eats, and they both realize that they've sinned. Did they die? Kind of a trick question. Yes and no. Still alive physically, but they died spiritually right then and there. And eventually, they would surely die. He's got a promise. Okay, where in the story do we see God's love for Adam and Eve?
He clothed them.
What's that?
He clothed them with a sheep skin.
Okay, we
Rhino skin.
could put it there. That is an option, because that is God showing his love. He could have judged them and killed them right then and there. Instead, he clothes them. In depending where you put the climax, that could work. Is there another option of where we might see God's love also?
In the beginning.
Okay, in what aspect? Okay. Okay, in verse, remember it starts where our passage, we could go back to where he makes them, but in verse 7 is where kind of our passage begins.
God was walking in the garden and he spoke to them after they had sinned. He's reaching out to them. So,
Okay? And again, this one, I think we can have several good arguments, as well as, again, part of it is you're thinking too, and I think any of these are valid. What can we take from there and then use it to apply to the kids? One other aspect, and you could have listed those others too, but one other aspect is he made a beautiful garden for them to enjoy. He placed them in there and he told them what? So you could put it here, I might even go over and, I guess he doesn't tell Eve, Adam has to tell her. But I love his command that he gives to Adam, and then he's supposed to relay on to Eve. His real command is, verse 8, I can't read that, 11. And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, what was his command? In 2:11.
The name
11, 2:11?
2:11. The name verse is John 16.
Oh, I can't see that little one. 16.
And the Lord God commanded him, saying, "Of every tree of the garden
I can read
you
the
may
words.
freely eat."
Sorry, you'll laugh when you get older too. Your eyesight begins to go bad. It says, you may surely eat of every tree of the garden. I love that emphasis. He tells Adam, look, here's all these 100, I don't know how many fruit trees there were, but here's all these trees of the garden. Eat every single one of them. Here's how much I care for you, how much I love you. Nothing in here is bad. Eat. Just stay away from the one. But what do? Just like Adam and Eve, we want what we can't have. Even in their perfect nature, they wanted something that they couldn't have, that Satan convinced them of. All right, the problem, the love of God. Where is the offered solution? Remember, the problem is they've sinned. Where do we see the offered solution?
When God calls out to them,
We calls out to them really to help them see that they're away. So really, that's I think that could maybe be more so just where he's helping them to realize they're lost. But he offers them, and really mankind, something.
is it when he's like, there will be enmity between you and serpent, and then like he'll push your head? Like he's talking about what's gonna happen.
Okay, what verse?
15.
Okay. He says, I'll put enmity, which doesn't seem very promising and very nice, between you and the woman. But what will that offspring of the woman do? Okay, Stephen will crush his head. And that offspring was going to be the deliverer for the sin of Adam and Eve. So he says, and between your offspring and her offspring, he shall crush her head. He shall bruise your head. That's the enemy, the snake, serpent. But you shall bruise his heel. This is, as theologians call, you heard this term? Proto-evangelium. There. Big fancy word that simply means, proto means first. Evangelium, what do you think that is? Or another word for evangelism is? First gospel. First good news. First mention. So right after sin, God gives the good news that he's going to send a deliverer. So the offered solution to Adam and Eve was there's going to be someone that was going to crush sin and death and Satan. That person that we know of today that has now come, was all future for Adam and Eve. The one who came to do that was Jesus. Jesus, the perfect Son of God. He lived a perfect life. As God, he came down to earth, born as a baby, grew up. And we've launched right in there to talk about the red page. So God promises a Savior who would have victory over Satan. Result, where's the climax? The result of sin was what?
They got
Okay, they got thrown out of the garden. Verse 23. Okay, God said, Adam and Eve, you're out of the garden, and what is our conclusion? So much of one. I think it's the last verse, right? Okay, he puts in this cherubims, these angels with a flaming sword, so that no one can enter back into the garden, eat of the tree of life, and live forever in sin. So notice the love of God. When you're teaching this, which element of what application truth actually comes first as you're teaching? Okay, it would be what we would call the gold page. As you're starting out, and you're talking about how he made Adam and Eve and all this stuff, and you put them in a garden. Why? Because God loved him. It was a perfect environment, a perfect place, a perfect world. And then there's quite a bit of a story until you get to towards the end when you cover the sin and such. All right, 2 Kings. We did this one right already. Problem was David had leprosy. God allowed a little Israelite girl to tell him where he could go to maybe find healing. Elisha told Naaman to dip 7 times. As a result, he was cleansed from leprosy. And he goes back and he says, there is no other God. All the others are Israel. This one we covered already. How about the feeding of the 5,000? Let's go to Mark chapter 6. Mark chapter 6. 2 Old Testament ones. Now we're going to go to Mark 6. This parallels passage in Matthew and Mark, and Luke, and John. This is one story, one of the very few stories that all 4 Gospels cover. John is so different in his writings, he doesn't cover the first 3. The first 3 are known as synoptic Gospels. Similar to synonym, because they're very, very similar. John is very unique, but I believe it does cover this one as well. But we're gonna go to here to Mark 6. 32 through 44. Okay, so it isn't really, really long. Skim through it quickly, give you a minute or two. And then we'll come back and we'll talk over here about the problem. Love of God offered solution. Mark 6.
Losing my mind.
Mark
I was
6.
in Matthew 6 and
Oh.
I did not have.
Wait a second, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Did you get a 5,000 there? Mark 6:32. All right. Where do we find the problem in our story here?
People are hungry.
Okay? People are hungry. It's getting late. People are hungry. What verse? What verse says?
30, 35 and 36.
Okay. 35. 36. Where do we see the love of God? Ariana?
In verse 34, it says, and Jesus had a
Yeah, so here's one place where it distinctly says that Jesus had love or compassion on the people in verse 34. So again, this comes before. So we're going to put this, let's see, yeah. Jesus had passion on the people. He loved them. Verse 34. Okay. I don't know, we might have to point that over this way. The camera, I don't even know if it'll pick it up. All right, so what is the offered solution? What's that?
It could be the second part because there were two.
Okay, they were, yeah, they, what, that's part of that love of God. He looked at them and they were all scattered, and he felt compassion because they were not knowing what they're doing. They were kind of going, they were astray, and so.
Finding the 5 loaves and 2 fish.
Okay, so the problem is they're hungry. And so they're needing fed. So the offered solution is, okay, finding that food and offering them, right? Now, this, we can't, what would the climax be? Okay, so he feeds them, so we can't say in the offered solution, he fed them. Okay, so the offered solution is he takes that and he blesses it and he breaks it, and he has, because he's alone has power to do something magnificent with those bread and fish. And Jesus is the only one that can do something magnificent because he's the all-powerful one to take care of your sin. All right, so takes blesses the loaves and fishes. And fish. And again, reason why is he has the power to feed the multitude. Right, what verse?
41.
Okay. So here's a fun thing with some of these stories. To get a lengthy story, a lengthy lesson out of what, 12 verses? Because you almost talk more about the gospel than you do the story, but that's okay. Because the point of the story is to share the gospel. Right, what's the climax or result?
And they did all eat and were filled.
Okay,
Verse 42.
all ate and were full. Verse 42. And what's the conclusion?
They had 12 baskets full of fragments and the fish, verse 43.
12 baskets left. So, do you realize the Bible tells us right there that leftovers are biblical?
Yes.
For those of you that complain when mom has to feed you leftovers, you don't have anything. All right. Should we do one more? Got the hang of it? We'll flip through these real quick. Blind Bartimaeus. Can do blind Bartimaeus or the brazen serpent? How about the brazen serpent? Okay, Numbers 21, 5 through 10. That's not very long at all. 5 verses to get a 15-minute story out of. That should be interesting. Numbers 21. From Mount Hor they set out on the way to the Red Sea to go around the land of Edom. The people became impatient on the way. People spoke against God and against Moses. Why have you brought us out of the land of Egypt to die in the wilderness? There's no food and no water, and we loathe the worthless food. Then the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they hit the people, bit the people. So that many people of Israel died. Man. The people came to Moses and said, "We have sinned, for we have spoken against the Lord and against you. Pray to the Lord that he takes away the serpents from us." So Moses prayed for the people. The Lord said to Moses, "Make a fiery serpent and set it on a pole, and everyone who is bitten, when he sees it, shall live." So Moses made a bronze serpent and set it on a pole, and if a serpent bit anyone, he would look on the bronze serpent and live. Not very much in there. So, what's the problem?
People were impatient and spoke against God.
Okay, kind of verses 4 through 6. If we want to back up there a little bit, what says 5 through 10? But it should be 4. The people were murmuring. I mean, not that they were just impatient; they were murmuring and complaining and ungrateful. And so God sent snakes among them, and convinced that ungratefulness is one of the things, besides pride in a person's life, which then leads to ungratefulness. Ungratefulness may be one of the second worst sins, if we're going to categorize them. It's one of those two that leads people away from God. All right, where is the love of God shown in all of this?
Is it that even though they were like really bad, God still provided water for them to be healed?
Okay. In spite of their sinfulness, God responds to Moses' prayers and gives them instruction to help. Okay, there in verse 8. Where we find that what is the offered solution?
The bronze serpent snake.
Okay? Instructions for the brazen serpent placed on a pole. Somebody says that's, you know, the medical symbol for, what the medical symbol is for doctors? The serpent on a pole. There might be a little more cultic to that too, but I think that's originally where the idea came from. What's the result? Whoever looked to the brazen serpent didn't die, an evidence of faith. In the climax, oh, we didn't read verse 10. The people of Israel set out and camped at Oboth, so they continued on the journey. They had learned a valuable lesson, hopefully, until they did it again, about trusting God. Any questions relating to your assignment 4, which is to come up with those 5 questions? I did you see the little bookmark I gave you? That has those 5 questions and on the back side of the truths that you can utilize to incorporate within there, okay? So we've got, we could do another one, but I figured I would take, some of you may need to catch up, some of you may have some questions relating to this passage, maybe relating to the previous one. Were you all able to work through your progression of events and all the other stuff? Did you go back and put your symbols into your outline? Well, you can't, because that's what you're doing today. So, what I would encourage you to do is go back to your application sheet that I just gave you. Go back to your passage that you were assigned and work on where can you put in the love of God, problem, solution, who's your main character. And Joe and I and Mrs. Musgrave will be around to kind of help in this. Yes?
Is this our only homework?
Did Mrs. Musgrave give you an assignment?
Yeah, no, I think I forgot about it.
I don't think there is one.
The iPad, no.
Well, I mean, the iPad, no, they don't, because you don't have to teach a song. So, to my knowledge, that's all there is. I mean, so you do this, you do the sheet that I just handed out, and then you're gonna go back to your outline and insert the gospel symbols. Okay? So this gives you a chance to allow us to kind of help you work on it.